So today, we're going to dive into one of the strangest, most paradoxical job descriptions in all of history, a mission given to the ancient prophet Isaiah.
But first, let me ask you something. Imagine this for a second. What if your whole job, your entire purpose, was to deliver a critical message to an audience that your own boss told you was absolutely 100% guaranteed not to listen? I mean, how would you even get up in the morning?
Well, that wasn't a hypothetical for the prophet Isaiah. That was his actual job description. Now, it sounds like a complete recipe for failure, right? But as we're about to see, the goal was something totally different. So let's really break down this impossible task.
Okay, so Isaiah has this incredible, life-changing vision of God. He's totally overwhelmed, but he's ready to serve. He says, "Here I am, send me," full of passion. But the instructions he gets back are just staggering.
God essentially tells him, "Go, and your preaching will make people hear but not get it. They'll see, but they won't perceive what's really going on." It's a mission designed for non-comprehension. It's not about winning converts or changing minds like we'd expect. It's a genuine paradox.
Now, this is a really key point to understand. Isaiah's message wasn't supposed to create a hard heart in people. It was more like it was meant to expose the stubbornness that was already there. His words were basically a spotlight, revealing a spiritual condition that already existed deep down.
So, staring down the barrel of this seemingly pointless task, Isaiah asks a very human question. You can almost feel the ache in his voice when he cries out, "For how long? How long do I have to do this? How long will things be this way?"
And the answer he gets is just devastating. Basically, you're going to do this until everything collapses. Until the nation is judged so completely that the cities are empty ruins and the land is a wasteland. We're talking about a complete and total national catastrophe.
So you have to ask, why? Why such a harsh message? Well, to understand the verdict, we have to look at the charges. And God lays them out like a prosecutor building an airtight case in a cosmic courtroom.
The whole scene is set up like what you could call a covenant lawsuit. God puts his own people, the nation of Judah, on the witness stand. And he calls the heavens and the earth, all of creation, to be the jury and hear his complaint against them.
And you can feel just how broken the relationship is in this one tiny shift in language. So often, God calls Israel Ami, which means my people. It's a term of endearment, of family. But here, God tells Isaiah to go preach to this people. It's a term of distance, of contempt almost. That intimacy is just gone. And the charges are just brutal. First, rebellion, a deliberate, conscious revolt against God. Then ignorance, and not just any ignorance. God says that an ox knows its master, a donkey knows where it gets fed, but his people don't. And finally, unfaithfulness. They've just forsaken him.
So what's the result of all this? The book paints this powerful picture of a prize fighter who's been beaten so badly he's unrecognizable. That's the spiritual state of the nation. It's just pummeled, bruised, and broken.
And listen to how visceral this gets. It says from head to toe, there's no healthy spot left. It's all just wounds and welts and open sores. The corruption isn't just in one place. It has infected the entire system. It's a total body failure.
And because of this, all their religious stuff, the sacrifices, the festivals, the prayers, it's all meaningless. It's just going through the motions. God says he's sick of it because while they're singing songs, their hands are metaphorically full of blood because of all the injustice and corruption in their society.
Man, it all sounds pretty hopeless, doesn't it? A mission to nowhere, a nation condemned, a verdict of total destruction. But, and this is a huge but, hidden inside all this doom is this surprising, powerful little flicker of hope.
Just when you think it's all over, God adds this little detail. A tenth will remain. And this introduces one of the biggest themes in the entire Bible, the idea of the remnant, this small group that survives and carries the future. To explain it, Isaiah uses this brilliant image from nature. He says, look, when you chop down a huge, mighty oak tree, you're not left with nothing. You're left with a stump.
And here's the absolute key. That stump, it looks dead, right? It looks like destruction. But hidden inside it is the holy seed. It has life in it. It's the source from which brand new growth, a whole new future, can spring up after everything has been clear-cut.
So that's the remnant. It's the stump of the nation. It's not about the huge forest that got cut down. It's all about that vital, life-filled seed that's left behind. That's where God is going to do his new work.
And get this, this wasn't just some abstract idea for Isaiah. This was so core to his whole message that he literally baked it into his own family. He named one of his sons Shir Jashub, which actually means a remnant will return. His own kid was a walking, talking sermon of hope.
So what's the big idea here? What does all this really point to? It's a profound principle. God isn't as concerned with the quantity of followers as he is with the quality of their faith. He's focused on the vital few, not just the big crowd.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This ancient idea of the remnant seems to suggest that real, lasting hope isn't always found in the size of the crowd, but in the quality of the seed. So the question for us, I guess, is, where do we see that principle at work in our world today?